I came home from work, and my driveway was empty. No red Tesla. No charging cable. Just oil stains from my husband's truck and a text from him that said, "Don't freak out. I let Mom borrow your car for a while." Borrow. That car was in my name. Bought with my money. And the way he said it, like I was a child who didn't get a vote, made my stomach drop. I didn't know it yet, but that text was the moment my marriage cracked straight down the middle. Stick with me. My name is Natalie Brooks. I was 29 at the time, and I had worked hard for everything I owned. Long nights, skip vacations, saying no when others said yes. That Tesla wasn't just a car. It was proof that I could stand on my own. I paid for it myself. Every single payment came from my account. Evan, my husband, liked to tell people how proud he was of me. He smiled a lot, said all the right things in public. But at home, it was different. He talked about family values like they were rules I had to follow. His family always came first. His opinions mattered more. And somehow, my things slowly became ours when it suited him. I stood in the driveway for a long time, staring at the empty space. I reread his text again and again, hoping I misunderstood it. I called him. He didn't answer. When he finally did, his voice was calm, almost bored. "You're overreacting," he said. "It's just a car. My mom needs it more right now." I told him it wasn't about the car. I told him he should have asked me. I reminded him it was mine. He sighed like I was being difficult. "Why are you making this a big deal?" he said. "You're being selfish, Natalie. Family helps family." That word, selfish, hit me hard. I felt confused. Embarrassed. Like I was wrong for being upset. I started questioning myself, even though deep down I knew I was right. When he came home that night, we argued quietly. No yelling. Just him talking over me, brushing off my feelings, telling me I was too emotional. The conversation ended with him walking away and saying, "You'll get over it." I stood there alone, realizing something had changed. Not loudly. Not all at once. Just a small, sharp break. And I knew, even if I didn't say it out loud yet, that this wasn't just about a missing car. Diane Brooks had always been polite in a way that felt sharp. She smiled, but her eyes never softened. From the first day I met her, she made small comments that stayed with me. Things like, "Evan likes his meals done a certain way," or, "In this family, we don't keep secrets from each other." It always sounded sweet, but it never felt kind. I started thinking back on moments I had brushed off before. The time she rearranged my kitchen because it worked better for Evan. The way she corrected me in front of guests, then laughed and said she was just helping. Evan never stopped her. He usually smiled and told me I was being too sensitive. Whenever I tried to set a boundary, Evan turned it into a problem. If I asked for privacy, he said I was pushing his mother away. If I wanted time alone with him, he said Diane felt lonely. Her comfort always came first, even when it crossed my lines. 2 days after the Tesla disappeared, I saw photos on Diane's phone by accident. New seat covers. A phone holder mounted on the dash. A keychain with her initials. She wasn't borrowing the car. She was settling into it. That night, I asked Evan how long his mother would be using my car. He didn't look at me when he answered. "However long she needs it," he said. My chest tightened. There was no plan to return it. No discussion. No respect. It felt like a decision had been made without me, about something that belonged to me. Diane started calling it my Tesla. She told friends how smooth it drove and joked that she might never give it back. When I forced a smile, she patted my arm and said, "You're young. You can always get another one." Evan laughed along with her. That hurt more than anything. Not the car, but the way my place in my own marriage felt smaller. Like I was just there to support him and his family, not to be heard or respected. I began to notice how often this had happened before. How often my wants came second. How often I stayed quiet to keep the peace. The Tesla was just the clearest example yet. Lying in bed one night, I stared at the ceiling and felt something heavy settle in my chest. I wasn't angry anymore. I was sad. Sad that the man I married couldn't see me. Sad that his mother's needs mattered more than my voice. For the first time, I wondered what else I had given away without realizing it. I waited until the house was quiet before I talked to Evan again. No distractions. No jokes. Just the truth. I told him we needed a real conversation, not another brush-off. He looked annoyed, like I was wasting his time. I told him it wasn't about the Tesla. I said it was about respect. About him making a big decision without me and acting like my feelings didn't matter. I told him I felt pushed aside in my own marriage. He laughed once and shook his head. "You're really stuck on this car," he said. "I didn't know you were so materialistic." That word hit me hard. I tried to explain again, slower this time. I said the car stood for years of work, for choices I made, for something that was mine. He crossed his arms and said I was being selfish, that his mother needed help, and I should be proud we could provide it. Then he said something that made my stomach turn. "Ever since you started making good money, you've changed. You think you're better than everyone else." I stared at him, stunned. He took my success and twisted it into arrogance. My independence became a flaw. My hard work became something to be ashamed of. I realized he wasn't listening at all. He was rewriting the story to make himself right. That was the moment I saw it clearly. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was gaslighting. Every time I spoke up, he made me feel small. Every time I set a boundary, he turned it into a character flaw. After that talk, something shifted between us. We stopped sharing little things. Our conversations became short and careful. The space between us grew, even when we sat in the same room. I started thinking about the past, about how many times I stayed quiet to keep things calm, how often I apologized first, even when I wasn't wrong. I wondered how long I had been shrinking myself just to fit into his idea of a good wife. Without telling him, I began paying closer attention. I reviewed bank statements. I saved receipts. I wrote down dates and decisions. Not because I had a plan, but because something inside me said I needed clarity. At night, I lay awake next to him, feeling farther away than ever. I wasn't angry anymore. I was alert. And for the first time, I wasn't questioning my worth. I was questioning the marriage. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. The house was quiet except for Evan's voice coming from the kitchen. I stopped when I heard my name. I didn't mean to listen, but my feet wouldn't move. He was on the phone with his mother. His tone was soft, reassuring. The tone he never used with me anymore. "She's upset now," he said, "but it's basically ours anyway. She'll get over it." I felt my chest tighten. Basically ours. Not hers. Not mine. Ours when it suited him. I stood there, frozen, listening as he laughed quietly. "I told her she was overreacting," he continued. "You know how she is. How I am. Like my feelings were a flaw. Like my work meant nothing." In that moment, I understood something painful and clear. Evan never saw me as an equal. He saw me as someone to manage, not someone to respect. I walked back down the hallway without making a sound. I went into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my hands. My face felt hot, like I had been exposed. This wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. The person I trusted most had reduced me to a joke behind my back. When Evan came into the room later, he acted normal. Asked me what I wanted for dinner. I nodded and answered calmly. Inside, everything was shifting. I replayed his words over and over. "She'll get over it." He had already decided my feelings didn't matter. He had already chosen his side. That night, I didn't argue. I didn't cry in front of him. I didn't explain myself again. Something in me went quiet. Not weak. Focused. I started noticing things I had ignored before. How he talked over me when we were with others. How decisions were made without my input. How my achievements were brushed off, while his were praised. I realized arguing with him only gave him more chances to twist my words, to make me doubt myself. So I stopped. Instead, I watched. I listened. I remembered. I paid attention to how money moved, to whose name was on what, to how often my voice was missing from decisions about my own life. Lying in bed that night, I felt a strange calm settle over me. It wasn't peace. It was clarity. I knew now that this wasn't about fixing an argument. It was about seeing the truth. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. I didn't plan to tell my dad. I kept telling myself I could handle it on my own. But one afternoon, I found myself sitting across from him at his kitchen table, staring at a cup of coffee I hadn't touched. My hands were shaking. My dad, Richard Hale, was never loud. He didn't rush people. He watched, listened, and spoke only when it mattered. He looked at me for a long moment and said, "You don't come here like this unless something's wrong." I tried to keep it simple at first. I told him about the Tesla, about Evan giving it to his mother without asking, about how small I had been feeling in my own home. My voice stayed steady, but my chest felt tight. Dad didn't interrupt. He didn't get angry. He just nodded and asked quiet questions. Whose name is on the title? Who pays the insurance? Did you ever give permission? Each question landed heavier than the last. Not because he was accusing me, but because he was helping me see things clearly. Facts. Ownership. Choices. When I told him everything was in my name, he leaned back slightly and took a breath. Still calm. Still controlled. That somehow made it harder. I kept talking. About the comments. The way Evan spoke about me. The phone call I overheard. Halfway through, my voice cracked. I tried to stop it, but I couldn't. Years of holding it together spilled out at once. I feel stupid, I said quietly. Like I let this happen. My dad shook his head. You trusted your husband, he said. That's not stupidity. That was when I broke down. Not loud. Just tears I couldn't stop. He handed me a napkin and waited. He didn't rush me. He let me feel it. When I finally calmed down, he looked at me and said something that stayed with me. I can step in, he said. I can ask questions and make things very clear. But I won't do it unless you're ready. This has to be your choice. I looked at him, surprised. He wasn't trying to take control. He was offering support, not rescue. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone. I didn't answer him right away. I just nodded, letting his words settle. As I drove home, I felt lighter and heavier at the same time. Nothing was fixed. But I wasn't carrying it by myself anymore. The dinner was Evan's idea. He said it would be nice for everyone to clear the air. I knew better, but I agreed. My dad came with me, calm as always. He didn't ask questions on the drive. He just listened. Diane arrived first, pulling into the driveway in my red Tesla. She stepped out smiling, jingling the keys in her hand like a trophy. Drives like a dream, she said loudly. I don't know how I lived without it. I forced a polite smile. My stomach twisted, but I stayed quiet. At the table, Diane kept finding ways to bring it up. She talked about how easy it was to park, how people always complimented the color. She laughed and said, I might just keep it, then looked at me like she was joking. Evan laughed too. When I finally said, it was a big purchase for me, Evan cut in quickly. Natalie worries too much, he said. Mom needs it more right now. That was it. He chose her side without hesitation. Right in front of my dad. The room felt heavy after that. I could feel my heart racing, but I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I had already said everything before. This time, I stayed silent on purpose. My dad watched the whole thing. He ate slowly. He nodded when spoken to. He didn't react to Diane's comments or Evan's dismissive tone. That silence felt louder than any argument. Diane mistook it for approval. She leaned back and said, In this family we share. We don't keep score. Evan nodded. Exactly. I kept my eyes on my plate. I could feel the familiar urge to speak up, to correct them, to defend myself. But I didn't. I let them talk. I let them show who they were. When dinner was almost over, my dad put his fork down. He wiped his mouth calmly and looked at Evan, then at Diane. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't sound angry. I'm just curious, he said evenly. Who exactly owns that car? The room went still. Diane's smile froze. Evan opened his mouth, then closed it again. No one answered right away. I looked up for the first time that night. In that quiet moment, I felt something shift. Not relief. Not victory. Just the clear sense that the truth was about to step into the room, whether anyone was ready for it or not. Evan cleared his throat after my dad's question. Well, I mean, he said, looking between us, we're married, so it's kind of shared, right? My dad didn't argue. He just nodded once and asked, Is your name on the title? Evan hesitated. Diane jumped in quickly. They're a team, she said. What's hers is his. My dad turned to her calmly. That's not how ownership works. The room felt tight. Evan's face flushed. He said my name like he was warning me. Why are we doing this in front of everyone? My dad finally spoke more than a few words at a time. Because clarity matters, he said. Especially when lines get crossed. He looked at Evan. Years ago, when Natalie started earning real money, she asked me for advice. I helped her set things up to protect herself. Her car, her accounts, her assets. All hers. Diane's eyes widened. That can't be right, she said quickly. It is, my dad replied. No edge in his voice. Just facts. Evan stood up slightly from his chair, defensive now. So what? I'm her husband. That should count for something. It does, my dad said. But it doesn't give you the right to give away something you don't own. The silence after that felt heavy. Diane's confidence cracked. She started talking fast, saying she didn't mean any harm, that she thought it was a gift, that she would never cause trouble on purpose. My dad listened, then said something that landed hard. Intent doesn't erase impact. He looked at Evan then, not angry, just deeply disappointed. I expected better from you. That hurt Evan more than shouting ever could. I saw it on his face. He had no comeback. I sat there quietly, my heart pounding. For the first time in years, someone else was saying the things I couldn't. Someone was standing between me and the pressure, the blame, the twisting of facts. My dad turned to me. You did nothing wrong, he said simply. Those words hit me harder than anything else that night. I felt my throat tighten. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I wasn't overreacting. I felt seen, protected. Not because someone was fighting for me, but because the truth was finally spoken out loud. As the dinner ended, nothing was resolved yet. But something important had changed. The power in the room was no longer where it used to be. After the silence settled, my dad spoke again. His voice stayed calm, almost gentle. This doesn't need to turn into a fight, he said. But things do need to be corrected. He explained the consequences plainly. The car would be returned. Insurance and access would be handled properly. No more decisions made without Natalie's consent. There were no threats in his tone, just certainty. Like someone stating facts that couldn't be argued. Evan looked shaken. Not angry. Not loud. Just unsettled. I could see it in his eyes. He had always assumed I needed him more than he needed me. That my independence was just a phase, not something real. Now he was realizing how wrong he'd been. Diane suddenly changed. Her confidence faded, replaced with hurt expressions and soft sighs. I never meant to cause problems, she said. I feel attacked. I was just trying to help. No one rushed to comfort her this time. That's when I finally spoke. My voice didn't shake. I wasn't emotional. I was tired of carrying things quietly. This isn't about help, I said. It's about respect. You didn't ask me. You didn't listen. And when I spoke up, I was made to feel selfish. Evan opened his mouth, but I kept going. I worked for what I have. I didn't borrow it. I didn't take it from anyone. And I won't apologize for protecting it. The room stayed quiet. I could feel my heart beating, but I stayed steady. I need things to change, I said. No more decisions about my life without me. No more sharing my things without my permission. And no more talking about me like I'm not in the room. Diane looked down. Evan finally nodded slowly. For the first time, he wasn't arguing. I wasn't asking. I was setting boundaries. Something shifted inside me in that moment. I didn't feel small anymore. I didn't feel like I had to explain myself over and over. I felt clear. My dad watched quietly, pride in his eyes, but he didn't step in. He didn't need to. This part was mine. When we left that night, nothing was magically fixed. But the balance had changed. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was choosing. And for the first time in a long time, I felt in control of my own life. A few days after the dinner, Evan approached me. His voice was quiet, careful, like he was testing the water. I'm sorry for everything, he said. I didn't mean to upset you. I just wanted to help. I looked at him and realized immediately that this wasn't real. It was performative. He wasn't apologizing because he understood me or respected me. He was apologizing because he'd lost. The Tesla, the power, the control, all of it had slipped away. His remorse wasn't about me. It was about his own comfort. I didn't respond right away. I needed to think. Over the past few years, I had stayed quiet more than I should have. I had compromised, backed down, and swallowed my feelings to avoid fights. I had allowed my voice to fade in my own home. I thought about the small moments that added up. The times he dismissed my opinions, brushed off my achievements, or made decisions about me and my belongings without asking. I remembered how I had given in, always hoping it would make things easier, only to feel smaller each time. That reflection was painful, but it was also clarifying. I could see my marriage for what it really was. It wasn't about partnership. It wasn't about love or respect. It was about control. And I didn't want to live that way anymore. The decision came slowly, like a weight being lifted. I would leave. Not angrily, not in a rush, but decisively. I would choose myself, my independence, and my peace over pretending everything was fine. It was terrifying. I had built a life with him, shared dreams, and invested emotionally. Walking away felt like stepping off a cliff. But I knew deep down it was right. When I told my dad, he didn't push. He didn't lecture or try to sway me. He just nodded, steady and calm, and said, I support you. Whatever you decide. That support, quiet and unconditional, gave me the courage I needed. I told Evan my decision later, calmly and firmly. He tried to protest, but I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain further. The marriage had been a pattern, and I was breaking it. For the first time in years, I felt seen, heard, and free. I chose myself, not as an act of anger, but as an act of clarity and self-respect. And in that choice, I found the strength I hadn't known I still had. The day the Tesla was returned, I didn't feel excited. I walked out to the driveway and saw it sitting there, spotless, keys in the ignition like nothing had happened. For a moment, I remembered all the stress, the arguments, and the betrayal. But then I realized it didn't matter anymore. The car wasn't proof of my independence now. I was. Evan came out, his face tight, apologetic, rehearsed. Diane hovered behind him, trying to smile, but her posture gave her away. She knew she had pushed too far. They both had to face the consequences of their entitlement. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the quiet truth of the situation. Their disrespect, their gaslighting, their constant assumption that my life and possessions were theirs to manipulate. It had all been seen, all been counted. I stayed calm. I didn't yell, didn't gloat. I simply walked up, took the keys, and started the car. I could feel their disappointment and frustration, but it wasn't mine to fix. I had spent too long carrying their emotions and trying to make peace with people who didn't see me. Now the balance had shifted. The truth was clear. I was no longer invisible, no longer pushed aside. Inside, I felt light in a way I hadn't for years. I thought about the dinners, the arguments, the phone calls I overheard, and the times I had doubted myself. Each moment had led me here, to a space where I could take a deep breath and know my worth. The Tesla was just a symbol. The real victory was in reclaiming my voice, my space, and my life. I looked at Evan and Diane once more, not with anger, but with quiet certainty. "This ends here," I said softly. They nodded, understanding, finally, that I wasn't going to argue or explain anymore. I didn't need them to apologize, not really. Their reactions no longer defined me. Walking away from the driveway, I felt a calm power settle over me. My life was mine to build on my terms. I thought about my dad, the support he had offered, and the boundaries I had finally drawn for myself. This was justice in its simplest form, not flashy, not loud, just undeniable. As I drove down the street, I smiled to myself. I was free. I was strong. And for the first time in a long time, I knew that no one could take that from me. My future was waiting, and it was built entirely on my own terms. If you're in a relationship where your boundaries are ignored, remember, your independence and finances are yours to protect. Document your assets, communicate clearly, and don't be afraid to seek guidance from trusted family or professionals. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's essential for respect, safety, and long-term peace.